Thank
5
you,
minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kadzig, last fall, October 23rd, you sent a letter to the chairman and the ranking member saying that there were no prosecutions there were going to be no prosecutions in the IRS targeting case. When was the decision made not to prosecute?
Well, I think that it was shortly before we sent the letter.
Shortly before the 23rd?
That's correct.
Week before, 2 weeks before, do you know?
I can't.
Month before?
I can't put a precise date on it.
In your letter to the chairman, you said over 100 witnesses were interviewed. Was John Koskinen interviewed?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Were those interviews transcribed?
I don't know.
In your letter, you said substantial evidence of mismanagement took place. Your investigation uncovered substantial evidence of mismanagement. By who?
By employees of the IRS.
Specifically?
I can't give you specific names.
Mr. Kadzig, you wrote this letter, right? 8-page letter?
That's correct.
Okay.
And
All
we
right.
scheduled a briefing for next week in order to provide you and other members with additional information, and we will have people involved in the investigation.
Well, we appreciate that, but we also sent you a letter on December 1st, the chairman and I, and we requested in that letter all documents that pertain to the investigation, and we've yet to receive a single document. Why is that?
We also received your letter yesterday requesting the file.
That's a follow-up letter. We sent the first letter over a month ago.
I understand. But producing an entire investigation or prosecution file presents particular issues with respect to our law enforcement sensitivities.
Now, we've heard that for
prosecutorial
3.5
responsibilities.
years. We've heard that for 3.5 years. I've had 2 different FBI directors. I've had Mr. Holder, Assistant Attorney General Mr. Cole, give me that exact same answer for 3.5 years. And their answer added one other word, ongoing investigation. And now the investigation's over, and it's been over at least by October 23rd, according to what you just testified and according to the 8-page letter you sent us on October 23rd. And now you're telling us you can't get us any documents, and you're just giving us the same. Is there some national security interest that prevents you from giving us those documents?
No, but
Is
there
there
are
some presidential privilege that prevents you from giving us those documents?
No, but there are law enforcement sensitivities and prosecutorial responsibilities concerning the confidentiality of witnesses, people who cooperated with the investigation, the candid assessments of the
But you can
attorneys
give us
and
something,
agents.
and you haven't given us anything. That's the point.
Well, we've engaged in the accommodation process, which includes the briefing, which we've scheduled for next week.
And that briefing, you're going to be able to give me a little more information to give me. In your letter, you say there's substantial evidence of poor judgment. Can you tell me who exercised poor judgment at the IRS when they were systematically targeting Americans' most cherished and fundamental right, their free speech rights under the First Amendment, being violated for 5 years in some cases of certain groups and certain individuals? Can you tell me who at the IRS was exercising that poor judgment?
As I said, we've scheduled a briefing for next week, and we'll be able to
Well,
provide
this
you
is going to
with
be a heck of a
information.
briefing, isn't it? Did you tell the White House before the October 23rd letter came to the chairman saying no one was going to be prosecuted?
No.
Did you tell Ms. Lerner, her counsel, that there wasn't going to be prosecutions before the letter came to Chairman Chaffetz?
No.
Did you tell Mr. Schulman that there was not going to be a prosecution before the letter came to Mr. Chaffetz?
I've never talked to Mr. Schulman.
No, I'm not saying you personally. I'm saying, did the Justice Department notify these individuals before you told this committee that no one was going to be prosecuted when Americans' most cherished First Amendment free speech rights were targeted for a 5-year time frame in some cases?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of. Okay. And you don't know if the interviews were transcribed?
I do not.
And you don't know if John Koskinen was interviewed?
I do not.
Do you think he should have been interviewed as the guy who was presiding over the Internal Revenue Service with a preservation order from the Justice Department, your agency, in place, and he is the IRS commissioner when 422 backup tapes are destroyed containing potentially 24,000 emails? Do you think it would be maybe a good thing to do in an investigation to interview Mr. Koskinen?
I can tell you that the career attorneys and the investigators and prosecutors that were involved in the investigation did a complete and thorough investigation.
Were any of the victims, the people who were targeted, were they notified before the letter came to Congress? Did you talk to any of them and say that no one was going to be prosecuted?
Not that I'm aware of.
You know Catherine Engelbrecht? You familiar with that name?
I'm familiar with that name.
Lady who started the organization True the Vote, lady who was audited both personally and her business by the IRS, was visited by the EPA, the ATF, the FBI, and OSHA, all while she was simply trying to clean up voter registration rolls, systematically targeted. The full weight of the federal government came down on her. Do you know if she was contacted before you decided not to prosecute anyone?
I don't know.
Mr. Chairman.
I know that individuals were interviewed in the context of the investigation, but I understand your
One more
question
thing,
being,
Mr.
was she prosecuted?
Well, one last question.
Sure.
So you're going to talk to us in a few weeks with a briefing.
Next week.
When do you think we're going to get the documents?
I think that as part of the accommodation process, we'll talk about that next week. And as I said, those documents present particular.
Do you plan on giving us the documents, or are you going to come talk to us and say you're still not going to get them to us and we need to talk more? Or are you actively now trying to get those documents and get them to us?
We're actively preparing for the briefing next week and determining what.
That wasn't my question. Are you actively getting the documents to us?
Are we actively getting the documents? We're reviewing the documents to see what the law enforcement sensitivities and other issues that are presented by those documents in any investigative or prosecutorial file.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please be prepared to answer all of those questions at the briefing next week. You've had years, you've looked at it, months to prepare. Given our letter, we expect a full and complete briefing.